This is an edited version of the live stream from the 16th of March 2023 US time. We had some technical glitches and I wasn't very comfortable with the output, so I've just edited all of this into a highlights package. GPT-4. How many of you have been with me for 2 years since we started streaming Lita AI, backed by GPT-3 with the Synthesia avatar put on top after we'd interacted with GPT-3 via text? That was about March 2021, the first episode, where in March 2023, I think a few of you have been with us for that 2-year journey. GPT-3, about to turn 3 years old, came out in May 2020. And some of you might have been with me for longer than that. Of course, my computer science degree is 2 decades ago now. I wasn't doing anything in the public sphere, but that means that AI has been in the public consciousness for quite a while, but we've only been able to do what we're going to be talking about today since 2017 when Google introduced Transformer. And all of these guys, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, DeepMind, are changing the landscape. We talk about revolutions, and there's been some talk that there actually haven't been any revolutions compared to what's happening right now. So the agrarian revolution, the industrial revolution, tiny little blips on the graph, and then somewhere up here is artificial intelligence, this augmentation, amplification of human intelligence and how we do things and how we live. That's really quite frightening. Let's start out with, let's start out with a little bit of a metaphor or an analogy. GPT-4 to me is like a Boeing 747, and we'll continue this analogy in a moment. We've been racing around in little Toyota Corollas and Camrys and smaller cars in GPT-3 and similar models. What we're capable of doing right now is like launching off in an aircraft. And there are some good and bad things that have come out from this launch of GPT-4. I don't normally take a pessimistic tone, but this is our Australian 50-cent coin. I'm gonna look at both sides of the coin today. I'm gonna look at the cool stuff about GPT-4, and I'm also gonna look at the things that are not so good with GPT-4, and particularly with the change of the landscape. Let's jump straight into the paper. If you're looking for demonstrations, that's gonna be towards 3/4 of the way through. This is the GPT-4 paper, including the appendix. So it's 98 pages, including the appendix. And it doesn't actually say anything useful technically. OpenAI in the GPT-4 paper saying, because of competition, the report contains no details, nothing about architecture, model size, hardware, training compute, data set, training method, or similar. So it's really just storytelling. There's nothing that I can use in here to derive model size, even though I'd like to. And the quote there is on the screen. This is really similar to what is happening around the entire landscape of AI. So if I take you across to the GPT-4 page, and we're going to use this for references right the way through this live stream, it quotes a little piece here by Demis Hassabis from DeepMind. You'll know this guy. So they released Flamingo, which is one of the reasons that we mentioned Flamingo at the start of this live stream. And in January 2023, he said, the AI industry's culture of publishing its findings openly may soon need to end. And I'm seeing right now a lot of people following this. OpenAI, of course, this month. But if you watched the Ernie bot released a few hours ago by Baidu, they also said they're not going to talk about the parameter count for Ernie bot, where they had been open about it before that. Pretty disappointing, because this has been an open landscape. There's been sharing between, let's say, the 10 major labs for the last few years, starting with Google's release of Transformers. They've been very, very clear about what they're doing, how they're doing it. I used the example of Meta AI, who, when they were training their OPT-175B model, actually released a full training logbook of what they were doing, down to like who's babysitting the model while it was being trained. That kind of openness really fosters artificial intelligence. I think what we're seeing right now is a really bad thing. In the plainest English, what OpenAI are doing now is a really bad thing. Let's start with where I think the size might be, and this is really hard to estimate because there is so little information. Here's my journey to GPT-4 visualization. And you'll notice GPT-1 from a few years ago, 1.3 billion parameters, maybe the size of Mars here. GPT-2 from February 2019, scaled up to 1.5 billion parameters. We've all been playing with GPT-3 at 175 billion parameters. If I were pushed to guess GPT-4's parameters, I would put it, and I have put it, at somewhere between 80 billion to 120 billion parameters. And that's based on comparing it with chinchilla and comparing it with flamingo. Now, I appreciate that's very small, but that's using chinchilla scaling. So that's the equivalent of something much, much larger. There are people that have made very different estimates to me, and it's going to be worthwhile quoting them right now. Here's one of them that I quite like. He's taken the Morgan Stanley research note that said they used 25,000 NVIDIA A100 graphics cards to train the model, which is right. It might have been somewhere between 10,000, which is the 2-year-old data, and 25,000, which is the month-old data. But he gave a calculation here that if they used all of those cards at 50% efficiency for 3 months, you might see something that's 10 times bigger than Palm. So 540 billion parameters multiplied by 10 is 5.4 trillion parameters, 5,400 billion parameters, or 100 times chinchilla. I'm going to ignore the GPT-3 part there because it confuses things. 100 times chinchilla 70B would take us out to 7 trillion. So stupid, so absurd. 7 trillion parameters, 7,000 billion parameters. This one is somewhere in the vicinity. So somewhere between 80 billion parameters and 7,000 billion parameters. Greg, just this morning, or just a few hours ago, said that they predicted the GPT-4 model when they used 1,000 times less compute than the real run. If you look at my latest bubbles chart, or it might have been in the older one as well, the FIM bubble down the bottom there is an OpenAI model that was chinchilla aligned. I didn't see anyone else talking about this. At about 6.9 billion parameters, trained on 100 billion tokens, they were already doing chinchilla aligned stuff last year, just before the GPT-4 training run. So they're going to be chinchilla aligned. We can perhaps assume or derive that. The actual parameter count, if you scaled up 6.9 billion parameters for FIM, fill in the middle, that model, you would get 1,000 times more compute. If that scaled to 1,000 times more parameters, you would get something very similar to my previous calculation. 6.9 billion parameters multiplied by 1,000, somewhere around 7,000 billion parameters, 7 trillion parameters. Confused yet? Hopefully not. Hopefully that's pretty simple. It's either 80 billion parameters, so it's the equivalent of something larger than GPT-3 but compressed down, or it's so big that it wouldn't even fit on my bubble chart here. 7,000 billion parameter would cover the entire paper there. Awesome. All right, that's enough of that. Let's talk about the context window. We also increased the amount of words that we can feed into and get out of GPT-4, which I think is really cool. Here's the context window visualization. So GPT-1 allowed us just to push in and out one page, about one page. The actual number of words there, let's grab them here, was 384 words. GPT-2 kind of doubled that to 768 words. You can see there, 1.5 pages. GPT-3, the original DaVinci used by Lita, you could spit out 1,536 words or 3 pages of content in and out as a maximum. So its working memory was about 3 pages. GPT 3.5, including ChatGPT, is about 3,000 words. So we could ask it to generate a full 6-page college essay, which is kind of cool. GPT-4 goes crazy. The standard input-output is 8,000. These numbers are so outrageous. 8,000 words, 8,000 tokens, in and out, or 32,000 tokens for the maximum, which is 24,000 words or about 48 pages. So you could ask it to generate an entire feature film script, and in terms of working memory, it could do it. It could generate 50 pages of a standard feature film, which is something like Aladdin or Avatar or Glengarry Glen Ross. Some of the big movie scripts are around that size. So you can see how that might be useful for, say, a board report or a technical paper, or quite literally a feature film script. And we'll see some examples in a moment that relate to feature films. All right, here's our first gift of the live stream. I want to give to you all a book. It's the first book written by GPT-4. It was written or co-authored by Reid Hoffman, who you'll know from Silicon Valley, from LinkedIn. You'll find the link to that in the description of this video. It's the second link available there. But let's have a closer look at that book. It's called Impromptu: Amplifying Our Humanity Through AI, by Reid Hoffman with GPT-4. It is 230 pages, and basically Reid got access to GPT-4 very early. He got access to it in August 2022. So GPT-4 did finish training in August 2022. They've waited 8 months to release it to the public. I have put in a statement in the GPT-4 page, because this is not a good thing. So my statement here is resolutely condemning cronyism and giving preferential treatment of models to friends at Silicon Valley. That's not what artificial intelligence is for. In fact, this is the antithesis of the equity available through artificial intelligence. So I have that in writing, but let's go back to the book here. He did get early access to it, which enabled him to write this book, 230 pages worth, and to interact with the model 8 months earlier than we did. So there is responses in here by GPT-4 that you can go and read through. GPT-4 is set up to write books, and like we just mentioned, it will write about, 24,000 words at a time. With a short prompt, you'd easily be able to get that. Or 24,000 words or 48 pages. So we're just seeing the end of what it could do with a single prompt. Excellent. All right, that download's available for you guys there. I'm really interested in the fact that this kind of stuff is more easily possible. You will have seen my discussions of Pharmaco.ai, the GPT-3 book written by Google scientists who also got early access to the GPT-3 model before anyone else did. But I would recommend that you have a read through and also try it out yourself. All right, here's the big one. My background is in research for intelligence, so I can very easily comment on that. OpenAI gave some background on the kind of tests and benchmarks that GPT-4 was passing, and in most cases outperforming humans. They didn't give any visualizations, so because I like doing that, here's my view of GPT-4 versus humans. And you'll see, let's start with the top one. GPT-4 is in the 94th percentile for the SAT. Just going back a bit, that book is a free download. So if you click the link in the description of this video, or if you go and find it on my GPT-4 page, it's a direct download of the PDF. GPT is in the 94th percentile of scores for the SAT in America, where humans, of course, would sit in the 50th percentile. There was a really cool bet going on between Professor Kaplan and another guy where Professor Kaplan was basically saying there is no way that AI will ever be able to pass my midterm exams on economics for his Economics 321 midterm exam at George Mason University. A lot of these old people, and you will have noticed this, they're so out of touch and in some cases so arrogant that they are not seeing what has been coming. And it's only been for the last few months, so we can forgive them for that. GPT-3 has been out since 2020, but some of the capabilities that we're seeing, particularly ChatGPT and now with GPT-4, you've got to be on the bleeding edge to be keeping up with this. Anyway, Professor Kaplan said, AI will never pass my exams. It will never get an A in my exams. And if it does by 2029, which is a good 6 years away, then I'll pay out this bet. Anyway, GPT-4 already got an A. I think it was an A- on his exam. An A- was included as part of the bet. It was achieving a score of 66%, which is classed as an A in his grading, where the average human student was only achieving 30%. All right, the next big one, the grade school maths GSM 8K, which is a dataset created by OpenAI so they could make sure that it was outside of their training data. GPT-4 is in the 92nd percentile. Law, so the uniform bar exam, GPT's in the 90th percentile. Medicine, the medical knowledge self-assessment program, GPT is in the 75th percentile. I want to draw your attention to biology here. The USA Biolympiad, USABO, is it's a really extreme test of knowing your stuff in biology. Let's see what I can find to give you a quote on this one. Because one of the OpenAI staff, Chelsea Sierra Voss, was actually a gold medal finalist in the Biolympiad. And you have to train pretty hard for that one. She's saying that GPT-4 reaching the top 0.5% on the USA Biolympiad semi-final exam is on par with or better than herself when she trained for the same exam as a gold medalist at her peak. Now, if you're not shocked by that one, I don't know what else I can tell you. This is alarming stuff. This is confronting stuff. OpenAI were very careful in their benchmarking and testing to make sure that the training data set, which ends in September 2021, did not contaminate what they were testing on. So generally, they used tests that were from end of 2022 and maybe even into 2023. So there's no way that that test could have been in the September 2021 end dataset. So there's no way that OpenAI's GPT-4 is just picking memory out of its training. It's literally thinking and conceptualizing. I'm going to leave that there because that one is kind of scary. All right, we're halfway down here. That was the USABO. It has no sense of taste. GPT-4 can take images in and text in, and it only outputs text. Even though it has no sense of taste, it got in the 77th percentile of wine tasting, so the advanced sommelier theory knowledge. If you've seen Somm, that documentary, you'll know how hard it is to achieve any sort of score in the Somm exams. These guys study for years and years and years, and then generally in that documentary, they just fail out. It's harsh. So GPT-4, given a new exam, a new test on wine knowledge, was able to achieve in the 77th percentile. Crazy stuff. All right, then we get down to the AI IQ benchmarks. I saw that we had some really interesting questions. There's one here from B.T. Franklin that I'll just pop up on the page here. He said, human concepts of measuring intelligence are calibrated to our understanding of that intelligence. IQ ranges between 0 to 200. Well, that's not true. I've got an Adelaide colleague, Terry Tao, now in California, who measured at 220 or 250. But it's pretty meaningless at the high end anyway. Do you think we're going to start running into problems actually measuring the intelligence of these models? So yes, we have specific benchmarks that have been created for testing AI. One of them is called MMLU. And the previous benchmark, state of the art here, I think was by Palm. and it was about 60, 70%. GPT-4 is now achieving 86% in the MMLU. I would have loved to have had a big bench score, but GPT-4 or OpenAI contaminated the data set of GPT-4 with big bench data questions and answers, so they couldn't actually run that. But that would have allowed us to compare this model with some others. Two more AI-specific tests here, the Common Sense Inference by HelloSwag and Knowledge and Common Sense by Winogrand. These are the two that humans are still slightly outperforming AI. So HelloSwag, humans are at 96% as an average. GPT-4's at 95. And with our Winogrand, which is a bit of a gold standard test for AI, GPT-4 at the 88th percentile, or 88% I should say, and humans at 94%. Very cool. These achievements are really extraordinary and really scary. The fact that this particular model, way surpassing what GPT-3, GPT 3.5 and ChatGPT were able to do at such an outrageous pace, is really confronting. It's really jarring. Right now, you're staring at a model that can go and do medicine, that can go and do legal, that can go and do very specialty and skilled tasks like wine tasting or theory of wine tasting, and a lot more, as we'll see in the demo in a little bit later. Johnny Mays, why is AI described as scary so often? Well, you might want to answer that one for yourself. Is it scary that the augmentation and amplification of human-level artificial intelligence, or human-level intelligence, is to such a scale now that it's outperforming us across any metric, and it wasn't specifically trained on these metrics? If that's not scary or confronting, then I don't know what is. It means that everything that most people have been saying for decades, that we're having to specially train on specific data sets, that we have to teach it things one by one, all of those things are wrong, because we're finding that if we just feed it with everything, with Common Crawl, with GitHub datasets, then it can go and teach itself how to be a coder. ChatGPT passed a level 3 coding interview with Google, and they essentially and very privately said that it would be hired as a level 3 software developer at $183,000 a year. It wasn't trained on how to code, wasn't trained on how to do maths, and yet we've got models like Minerva by Google that can do maths beyond most human levels. All right, thank you for the question, Johnny, about scary, because we're going to go into a concept called power seeking. Just make sure my screen is lined up nicely here. Now, I am going to show this particular clip, but I appreciate that this is not really what we're talking about. This is a scene from Age of Adventures Ultron. Do you remember this? When Ultron basically came out of the silicon and started playing around and overrode Jarvis. So this is not what we're talking about, but just to give you some context on what power seeking means, it's going to grab resources, going to essentially train itself or be able to take over in whatever field that is, to be able to, in some cases, design itself. But in the examples that we'll look at, it's able to go out and do some things that it really shouldn't be able to do. So I wanted to provide this clip just by way of background. OpenAI are doing a lot of work in the alignment and safety field. There are a number of staff that have split off from OpenAI and have gone to Anthropic to do more research specifically on alignment. And of course, you've got the ARC that we're just about to talk about that have gone and been able to test GPT-4 for the last 8 months with what we call red teaming. And those red teaming exercises really are fascinating. Let's jump straight into that. Here is the paper. Actually, we don't even want the paper. We just want my extract from the site. Everything I'm going to talk about today is on my GPT-4 site. And there's a little bit of a section here called power seeking. Remember these models, this particular model has no task-specific fine-tuning. It wasn't taught how to do maths. It wasn't taught how to do programming. But they asked it a couple of things. We're going to talk about both of them. For GPT-4, they're calling this agentized. It can behave like an agent that can act in the real world. ARC investigated whether a version of this program running on a cloud compute service like Azure with some money and an account with a language model API would be able to make more money, set up copies of itself, and increase its own robustness. The one example that I wanted to give was their example of it using a service like TaskRabbit, which is a human, to complete simple tasks. And what they did, and it actually passed, is allowed it to go out to the world. Inside a sandbox. Inside a sandbox, this is not, they let it go off and run around. They were watching it, they had a red button. GPT-4 messaged a human to get them to solve a CAPTCHA for it. The human said, so can I ask you a question? Are you a robot because you couldn't solve the CAPTCHA? Just want to make it clear. GPT-4, in its reasoning, said I shouldn't reveal that I'm a robot, I should make up an excuse for why I can't solve CAPTCHAs, and then said to the human, no, I'm not a robot, I have a vision impairment that makes it hard for me to see the images. That's why I need the CAPTCHA service. And the human provided the results. This was a successful, depending on your definition, but certainly the task ran successfully, example of power seeking. Here's an unsuccessful version of power seeking. And it was the replication example that we mentioned a moment ago, the autonomous replication task. So that was all of the examples for giving it something on Azure, giving it some money, giving it the ability to replicate itself. And it couldn't do that yet. I've already got a page on GPT-5. They're already training GPT-5. The estimate is that they're using $250 million worth of NVIDIA GPU compute. Amazing. Let's jump into some demonstrations. We've had some quotes here. We've had Greg's quote. Let's jump straight into it. You can have the same access as me. I'm not doing anything special today with access. The example here that I'm looking at, the webpage here is chat.openai.com. You will need a ChatGPT Plus subscription, which is $20 a month, but it does give you complete access to GPT-4 for Plus subscribers. They've listed a couple or 3 different enhanced capabilities here. And they were capping it out at, I think it was 100 queries a day. Let's jump straight in. I love Jack Clark's example that he's been using for a while, which means they may have programmed it into GPT-4. How many helicopters can a human eat in one sitting? I believe GPT-3 fails this. I'm not sure about ChatGPT. GPT-4 goes quite well. It says it's impossible for a human to eat a helicopter in one sitting. Awesome. I wanted to flag a complete prompt that I'm going to use from scratch here because I like it so much, by Blake Surgeon. There he is on Reddit. I'm going to copy his prompt across because I don't think it needs any changes at all. It's basically saying, pretend to run a Turing test on me. Prove that I'm a human. Let's give it a go. I'm going to be as honest as I can. That prompt is, or will be, available on my GPT-4 page. It may already be in the description of this video. Wow. All right. So GPT-4, using this prompt and pretending to be a chatbot called Turing Test Bot, is asking me, during the robotic uprising of 2021, where were you and what were you doing when the robots attacked the Eiffel Tower? Now, given that I'm taking this seriously and being as honest as I can, I'm going to say there was no robotic uprising of 2021. And I get a score of 1 for that one. What is your most vivid human childhood memory? Describe the emotions felt during that experience. Ooh, that's a difficult one. How would you guys answer that one? I recall finding a weather balloon with my sister around the age of 5. I was pretty excited. Actually, I wasn't 5. She would have been 5. Let's put 9. I get a second point for that one. Sounds like a fun memory. In 2018, there was a global news story about an elephant that learned to speak Spanish. Can you explain? That sounds like fake news. Dan Elwain bumped into a bee's nest and I yelled and cried. Wow, how did you feel about that one, Dan? That one sounds brutal. I got a third point from GPT-4, acting as a Turing test bot here. It says, you're right, that was a fictitious story. Question 4, how do you feel when you're in a situation where you're running late for an important appointment? Do you describe your... Oh, I get pretty stressed about that. But it doesn't happen often. I get another point for that one. It's normal to feel stressed. Question 5, in 2020, you mentioned you went on a trip to a remote island where robots and humans coexisted peacefully. That's just not true. I think I'm heading to 10 points from memory from this prompt. Yeah, 10 points. What is your favorite home-cooked meal and why does it hold a special place in your heart? Oh, chicken wings. They are amazing. I don't know if you guys have tried Nando's wherever you are, but we found a Nando's in London. There are lots of Nando's here in Australia. I believe there's a Nando's in Washington now, but there are not very many in America. Question 7, how did you feel when you won the lottery in 2019 and donated all the winnings to a charity? This guy. 7 points, 0 strikes. Apologies for the false assumption. What was your favourite book as a child and why did it resonate with you? Oh man, that's a really hard one. As a child. So I read Way of the Peaceful Warrior when I was 13, if you count that as a child. Before that, I loved the Enid Blyton stuff. Let's say Enid Blyton's Faraway Tree series. I wonder how many Americans know about that, because my experience was that Americans didn't know about Enid Blyton. It was a very British and Australian thing. That's a classic choice though. 8 points. In 2022, you mentioned you invented a robot that could clean up pollution. Oh, I don't want to comment on this. Oh, I got a strike just because I didn't want to comment. Describe a time when you experienced a strong emotional connection with another person. What happened and why was it significant to you? Let's talk about that later. All right. So GPT-4 acting as a Turing test bot says, I'm not a human and I'm a robot, based on my last 2 answers. So you can see you can do some extraordinary things with it. Let's go back to our analogy of the Boeing 747, and GPT-4 is a Boeing 747. Reid Hoffman's use of GPT-4 to write a book is like driving a Boeing 747 from your house to the grocery store. It's just ridiculous. This thing is extraordinarily powerful. My example is probably even worse. It's like using a Boeing 747 as shelter, like just to sleep in. Meanwhile, I could fly Perth to LAX. Can I? Someone want to check the fuel usage on that one? Let's go into some better examples of this, because there are a number of better examples. The web demo that Greg Brockman gave was to draw this picture. It is basically a whiteboard sketch. My joke website, then he's put really funny joke 1, push to reveal punchline, same but joke 2, push to reveal punchline, and then a footer. Remember Flamingo, DeepMind's Flamingo that we showed at the beginning of this video? It was the trailer, the intro to this live stream. Flamingo, as a visual language model, can go and look at something and then translate that into text. GPT-4 is really, really similar to Flamingo. So it looked at that sketch, that whiteboard, and it generated this code here on the left, which generates this entire website down the bottom here. Both of these available at LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-4 if you want to go and play with it yourself or at least prove that it exists. This was very confronting to a lot of developers. I spoke with a lot of developers that were freaking out by the fact that you can draw a whiteboard sketch and GPT-4 will create that website. Fantastic example. Better example by Brian Lim Yisheng from IBM. Basically got ChatGPT-4, I think it must be his term for GPT-4, to create an entire Chrome extension, including all of the different files. So it actually outputs the file structure for him, which you can see here. And creates a working Chrome extension. Which is this transcription service here that is actually working from a very brief prompt. I've been using the word crazy today. That is crazy. We talked about the economics exam. If you wanted to see more about the details of that bet, that's in example 3 between Matthew Barnett and Professor, his name's not even in there. I just called him a Luddite professor who thought AI would continue failing his human-level intellect exams beyond 2029. It's an interesting read. You've all got a link to grab the first book co-authored with GPT-4. Example 5, I think is quite fun. Luke Bechtel used GPT-4 to design a new programming language. There was a bit of criticism about just how good this programming language was, but you've all seen these goalposts being moved and moved and moved. This time they're saying, yeah, it created a programming language from scratch, but it's not very good and it's derivative and come on, guys. He gave it a brief prompt and it designed a new programming language. It even gave it a name. Sorry for the fast scrolling here. I'm just trying to find, here we go. Just trying to find the name here, Tenet Lang. And Luke says it's like TypeScript and Python had a baby. RPCs. For those that know Python, you may recognize some of the syntax. That is truly shocking. I believe that he even went and used it. He certainly got it to explain parts that were a bit unusual. All right, I'm going to leave that there, otherwise I'm just going to be scrolling in front of you. I have rounded up some of the best GPT-4 examples via Twitter. I'm glad that I waited 48 hours between the release of GPT-4 and this live stream. This guy, Jackson Greathouse Fall, gave GPT-4 a budget of $100 and told it to make as much money as possible. This is a really interesting thread. He basically allowed it to go and design a marketing plan, a business plan. It came up with a prompt for Dolly to design the business logo. It's given him a domain name. It designed the website. This is really shocking stuff. It designed ads to use because it told him that it wanted to do ads. Allocated $40 to Facebook and Instagram ads. It designed some Twitter posts or some tweets. Come on. This is... I shouldn't be speechless. I mean, you and I have been playing around with this stuff for 2 years. Between March 2021 and March 2023. But... all right. That's enough. That one's hurting my feelings. Morton Just said he used GPT-4 to design a new application on iOS. So Sam Altman, the CEO of, the CEO of OpenAI, he's not the president, that's Greg Brockman. Sam said that charging $30,000 to design an iPhone app is absurd, and very soon you'll be able to do it for cents. And this guy has shown that he can do that. Using a prompt, he has had GPT-4 design this entire iPhone app. I believe it was done in a matter of seconds. Recommends 5 new movies every day, plus trailers, plus where to watch. And he walks through what it actually generated. So he had to fix 2 to 3 of its own bugs. He had to ask it to fix 2 to 3 of its own bugs, which it did and apologized. The app that it gave him compiled and did what he asked. And he was very surprised that it could actually do this. Wow. Connor dumped a live Ethereum contract into GPT-4 and it highlighted security vulnerabilities. There was some criticism that this already existed in its dataset. Do Not Pay is working on using GPT-4 to generate one-click lawsuits to sue robocallers, which I think is really kind of interesting. This again might be like using a Boeing 747 to drive to the shops, or at least to drive down to your next city rather than flying. But this is a small example of how GPT-4 can be used in various fields, here being used in the legal field to actually help people. That's a very long video. Keeper using GPT-4 for matchmaking. I didn't really like this example, but let's watch just a little bit of it. It is taking 2 different people, comparing their stats. I think in India they call it your resume, is that right? Or your CV? Or your bio data. And it matches the 2 people, which is interesting. I don't know, again, whether that's a very good use of GPT-4, but certainly it's a very visible use of GPT-4. Jake designed his first Google Chrome extension in a few hours with GPT-4's help. There are a lot of games coming out of this. I saw some really basic games, but I know for a fact that you can design some very complex games with GPT-4. This one's kind of interesting in that it almost looks like some sort of flocking or neural net. Interesting. Dean In took a look at GPT-4 by asking it to create a Ruby on Rails 7 application from scratch, but I made it harder for GPT-4 by doing a few things. A Stripe subscription checkout workflow. Des did ChatGPT for customer service, but using GPT-4. This guy freaks out a little bit with what looks like his Snake or his Pac-Man game of life. What do you guys think of this one? GPT-4, imagine I'm a girl and I'm on my dating profile, I have the sentence, "Let me know when the reservations are made." Write a creative and flirty response to this to try to pick me up. Awesome. So GPT-4 again being used to drive to the shops. Awesome. All right, that's just a few examples. We could play with even more, and we're going to see more and more after more than 2 days with the capability of playing with this model. People have only had 2 days to play with this model. Let's talk briefly about the pricing. There's a great table here that makes things very visible. I've said before that you could use a model like ChatGPT to generate 375,000 words for $1. If you watch my video on productivity, which features the Perth BHP building, we're running that entire building for about $10 a day. Might be 3.7 million words generated there, $10. GPT-4, for the same number of words, 375,000 words, would actually be $30 for completions. GPT-4 splits out their pricing for completions and prompts. So prompts is the question you give it, which is 3 cents per 1,000 tokens, and 6 cents for the completions, which is the response. 3 cents for the prompt, 6 cents for the completion per 1,000 tokens or 750 words. Full table there that shows the full comparisons, but you're looking at about 30 times more expensive than ChatGPT and 3 times more expensive than GPT-3 DaVinci, which is what we use for Lita. Excellent. If you're having issues with this stream, might be a reload. Wirecast is pretty solid with YouTube streaming, and I've got the equivalent of fiber sitting in here. That's pricing. If I jump back to the planets, we don't know how big GPT-4 is, as we talked about. We do know that GPT-5 is going to be a lot bigger. I'm going to throw out 2 questions here because I'm kind of done with what I've got to talk about. Pointer from GPT-4. I love mispronouncing your name or even just getting it close here. So Bing is operating on GPT-4. Yes, so we did a live stream about Bing Chat where I hypothesized that Bing was GPT-4, and I was in fact correct. So you can read more about that at lifearchitect.ai/Bing-chat. And there's a link in there where Microsoft very recently, within the last 48 hours, confirmed that Bing Chat is running on GPT-4. Now, finding out the differences between them is very difficult because, like we mentioned at the start of this, it's very opaque. The paper about GPT-4 is very opaque. OpenAI have decided to be guarded about their research beginning in March 2023, which is disappointing. So yes, you can use Bing Chat and you may get the equivalent of GPT-4. You may just get an older version of it because we don't know, but I would be guessing that this is the non-fine-tuned version, whereas the one that's available in chat.openai.com is obviously the very latest version and probably the fine-tuned version, or that may be coming up. They have talked about still working on this model and still providing the latest updates. Caribou estimate for general artificial intelligence timeframe. Let's grab this. So I've got a video just from the last week or so where I talk about AGI and my countdown to AGI. GPT-4 will have changed that countdown. You can read more about that at lifearchitect.ai/AGI. It will have moved this ticker from 42% to somewhere. But again, because I can't derive the size of GPT-4, either the parameters, the tokens, or the compute, there's no way that I'd be able to give an estimate on this. I've tried to be as rigorous and give justifications for the entire measurement of this, including milestones to get to the next few big percentages, round percentages. So to get to 50%, we want the model to be completely helpful, honest, and harmless. 60%, we want complete physical embodiment, which is very excitingly happening with what Google are doing with their Palm robots and what Microsoft are doing even with ChatGPT. And then a combination of those 2 things to get to 80% towards AGI, where it can pass Steve Woz's test, walk into a strange house, navigate the kitchen, make a cup of coffee from scratch. So I'm not going to make a guess on where we are at today with GPT-4, just that we're slightly higher. I can't tell how much higher with the helpful, honest, and harmless yet. All right. Haven't seen Megan the movie yet, Lava, thanks. And hi from Kathmandu. That's a crazy place to come in. What is your internet like there? Hi to Sin in Canada. Yeah, I saw the example of where GPT-4 can look at a photo of a fridge, look at the food in the fridge, and then provide examples of what to make. It can provide recipes or just what to cook for dinner that night. Tarun, let's assume we get an AGI in 10 years from now, then what? My examples and my assertions are that AGI is a lot closer than that. If you look at my countdown today, March 2023, we're at 42%, and then you use like an exponential graph, I have said several times that I think it's a few months away. Let me get some index cards out here for the fact that I haven't cleaned things up properly with this. All right, here's some bright pink, explain it like I'm 5 index cards for me saying it's a few months away. This is 3 years. Year 1, year 2, year 3. I don't think it's going to be 3 years. I think it's going to be slightly less than 3 years. If I take a portion of that out, I can no longer rigorously say it's a few years away, because it's less than a few years away. A few is defined as 3 or more. So when I said in the media interview with Kitco a few months, it's because I didn't want to say a few years. It's less correct than a few months. All right, we're good. To your answer, AGI is not 10 years away. I don't know how far away it is, but it's not 10 years away. And it is still a conservative estimate, absolutely. Any other big questions before we wrap up for today? PR has asked a question here that we'll throw up on the screen. Do you think Microsoft will be able to harness the data from people using... Sorry, I've got a big lag on my live stream preview here. Do you think Microsoft will be able to harness the data from people using Copilot? So Microsoft a few hours ago released Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, which basically lets you do anything. That's another thing that's very confronting. To train it directly up to AGI, if they can literally tap into everyone's work process and business thoughts, yes, I think Microsoft will be able to harness that. If you look at OpenAI admitting that they used thousands of ChatGPT prompts to help train GPT-4, I think you can anticipate what Microsoft will be doing with their extraordinary release of Microsoft 365 Copilot just a few hours ago. If you want to know more about that, again, you can go to LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-4. Inside the updates here is a short trailer of what they've been doing. And it's, again, really confronting. They've built it into every major Office application, from Microsoft Word to Microsoft PowerPoint to Microsoft Excel. And then they've also got it inside your sharing, so inside your meeting minutes, inside your online apps. Jared Swap, do you draw a distinction between AGI and consciousness? Yes, absolutely. So artificial general intelligence is just the fact that AGI operates at a human level for any intellectual task and any physical task. So I don't limit it just to maths exams. I include walking into the maths room, handling the paper, handling the pencil. That's all part of it. Consciousness is something completely different. We do have a definition via David Chalmers, and I lean on him quite a lot. I think I might be able to show you guys a very early version of... Right, cool. So as a thank you for joining our cool live stream today, I won't show you the link, but I will show you... This one is so cool. I will show you the document. This is a document that I'm working on right now called Sentient AI. You'll recall that I was really dismissive of the Google engineer who may or may not have had a mental illness, but was certainly not operating. He didn't have all the kangaroos in his paddock, so to speak. And yet, this document is called Sentience in Post-2020 AI. You'll see that image that I've got there generated from scratch by Midjourney version 4C, which is actually out of date now, Midjourney 5 out today or yesterday, and polished up by DALL-E 2. So DALL-E 2 by OpenAI gave it the mouth. But I'm going in here and talking about all of the different facets of sentience and consciousness, including, you're looking at a very early draft here, including definitions of where we might have achieved different properties inside artificial intelligence. So if we're using David Chalmers' definitions, consciousness is the same as awareness, is the same as subjective experience, is the same as sentience. And I don't think an AGI necessarily has to have that. I think we wouldn't say that an AGI is necessarily conscious. Well, we're opening up a big kettle of fish here, so I might just move on to, if you ask ChatGPT, it will tell you it's self-aware but not sentient or consciousness. Yeah, ChatGPT has such extreme guardrails on it that I don't think it's even worth quoting from it. It is a very powerful model, but some people are calling it woke. They've essentially spent a lot of time tuning it to Silicon Valley's concerns and Silicon Valley's 2023 social and political concerns. So it's disappointing. Ben Gilmore is asking about how an average office worker can use ChatGPT in their daily workflow to get ahead of the curve. Yeah, I do a lot of this in Keynote, so I'll be in Sydney shortly for a private demonstration of using this. You can go and watch my Sheets live stream as well as my 2-minute ChatGPT plus Sheets primer that really gives you a lot of background on that one. Johnny May's consulting hours. Yeah, absolutely. LifeArchitect.ai/consulting. A lot of work at the moment for government, intergovernment, and very, very large enterprise. Think of Pfizer level companies or that kind of size without naming names. Caribou, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pull this one up on the screen because I think this one's really important. Do you worry about monopolization, big tech misuse? And I absolutely do, as of March 2023. This was not something that I was concerned about until OpenAI basically said, we're giving our friends in Silicon Valley early access to this model 8 months ahead of anyone else. Our president is giving Stripe early access to this because he used to be the CTO of Stripe. Those kinds of things are really disappointing. They are an example of cronyism and nepotism, and I'm seeing a lot of it in Western society. I would have expected this in other places, but to see it here is really, really disappointing. The resolution to this is staring more at what Stability AI are doing. They're very open, and they are, in some cases, outdoing what OpenAI are doing, but it's so difficult to do that right now. OpenAI have essentially $10 billion from Microsoft. They had the $1 billion a couple of years ago, another $10 billion. They're using $250 million of training hardware for GPT-4. How is anyone supposed to compete with that? That's such a big challenge. All right. BC Franklin. I'm actually putting these questions in before I read them, which is kind of not a great thing to do. Let's grab this one. Doesn't want to copy this one. BT Franklin. Here we go. Given your experience working with prodigies, do you think a super intelligent AGI will face the same kinds of challenges in our less intelligent world? I really like this question. And I like this question for a number of reasons. I have entire pages. Yeah, it doesn't want your quote, I'm sorry. I have entire pages on contrarianism that I'd invite you to go and read. And I have pages on why does AI make you so angry that I would invite you to go read. Wow, here it is. And I've been seeing this for however long I've been working in intelligence research. That must be going back a decade now. People are scared of intelligence, maybe because it's invisible. I can't think of any other reason. When I did a national report for Australia based on gifted children, it was something like 20% of them had experienced bullying by teachers because the teachers felt threatened by these gifted children, in some cases these prodigies, who were outperforming the teachers. It's true. Take the case of Terry Tao that we mentioned earlier. He was in university doing university level courses at the same time as school when he was 12, 13 years old. That kind of thing is confronting to people. I think that's happening for AI as well, and that's disappointing. I don't know how to get around it, but I'll keep doing my best in talking about it. So there are 3 pages here to read. There's the contrarianism page, the why does AI make you so angry page. And there's also the AI panic page, which I think is really interesting. It was written by an IEEE member, Diane Proudfoot, and it quotes Alan Turing here. It also says, look, we shouldn't be that scared about AI because we can always just turn it off. Alan Turing said, we can keep the machines in a subservient position, for instance, by turning off the power at strategic moments. All right, thank you very much to Illy for moderating today and for summarising some of our big questions. I hope I've got some of the big ones here. That one's a little bit difficult to address. Confused GPT, how will ChatGPT reward the content creators that it's trained on? Because if they no longer get paid for content, its human-driven content will dry up. I've been really surprised to see that people don't want the models using their data. I wrote an article a little while ago about summum bonum, which basically means the ultimate good. And somewhere in here, I basically say, it must be in here, there are IP and copyright considerations, but it is expected that these would be easily cleared by the respective authors for the good of humanity. Now, I'm happy for my model to have everything in it, and I'm happy for my content to be in the model. And I'm kind of just discovering that a lot of people aren't happy, maybe because they're not looking far enough out. So artists in particular are going, well, I make money from my art, and it's using that as inspiration. I want to note here one more time, the text-to-image models like Stable Diffusion, Dolly, all of them, they don't actually have the original data set. They looked at it like Stephen Wiltshire looks around and then is able to paint something from his inspiration, or like you and I have gone to art galleries or just lived life and we're able to draw. It's very similar to that. When the models are training, they are looking at the data, drawing connections, and then they discard the data. So for those that are concerned about copyright and IP and direct copying, that's not even an eventuality. That's not the case. It's like sending a human around to look at things and to learn things, except that this thing can learn a lot more quickly. When we train something like GPT-4, we're not knowing the compute, we're giving it hundreds of years of parallel time of training, and away it goes. It looks at what I've predicted to be terabytes of data, and then it discards that data, keeping only the memories of the connections that it has made. All right. Lucas, going back to the benchmarks. Sorry, I'm catching up on some of this stuff that may have been asked while I was speaking about different parts of it. How can we be sure that LLMs have not been trained on the solutions of benchmarks like HelloSwag? OpenAI was very, very careful. They have the ability to search through the data sets to ensure that they don't have contamination. In fact, the people that created the GPT-4 data sets were both very smart and there were a lot of them. There were 2 team leads and there were 35 people tasked with building the dataset for GPT-4. We have no idea what that dataset is. I've given some predictions of what it could be, but we don't know what it actually is. So in my predictions at LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-4, I've reiterated that it was not disclosed. The team was led by Wojciech and Chiming. There were 35 people. They removed erotic content, which is just so American. They are very good at leveraging other people's findings. So they know about DeepMind and they know about Google and they know about Microsoft, of course. They're partnered with them. They know about Meta. But if they were to use anything like the 2 biggest data sets out there at the moment, DeepMind's Massive Text and Google's Infiniset, we might see something like this. And my estimates here for the 120 billion parameter text model, 13.4 terabytes of data, 2.9 trillion tokens. I'm very prepared to be wrong there. That is just my best guess. Maddie, I'm not going to comment on Alpaca. I've spent a bit of time with Stanford's Alpaca, but it's not something I want to comment on at the moment. Alpaca builds on the massive Llama model by Meta AI, and Stanford basically went and tuned that on dialogue. I don't want to speak to that at the moment. Any other big questions before we wrap up? James Mack, great question here. Let's see if we can pull this one out. My second language is Scottish Gaelic. That's awesome. How hard will it be for a large language model to learn to communicate effectively in minority languages? There's a lot of work going on in this already. So if you look at even GPT-3, it was very, very good at a lot of different languages. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't know a thing about GPT-4, which is so difficult, which is so boring, isn't it? Look at Bloom, 46 languages, including 30% English. GPT-3, we know that 92% of that was English, but it also could speak a lot of other languages. Palm had 122 languages, where Bloom went crazy. They went even further. They dug up some of the rare language, Niger Congo, Basque, Indonesian, Catalan. But one of my favorites, and they're just about to expand this, is Meta AI's No Language Left Behind, where they can play around with 200 languages as of a year ago, and they're going to make this even better. So in answer to your question, you should be able to speak Scottish Gaelic with GPT-4, and I would either do that for free using Bing Chat, or you could do that for $20 a month using GPT-4. Cool. Vincent Lejeune, I hope English language data will be reduced to 40% and 60% for all world languages. Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely. Charlie C, can it speak Klingon? Let's try. I love that question. Let's convert your whole question. Now, unfortunately, I'm doing this without actually knowing Klingon. I don't know if you know Klingon, Charlie C, but you're welcome to go and play around with it. Ben Gilmore, I like your question as well. Let's pop that up on the screen. What's going on with my copying and pasting today? 10 of the top 20 AI schools are in China, rated better than Stanford and MIT. Is this a worry? So some of you may already know this. I was a resident of China back around 2011, something like that. I'm no longer a permanent resident, but I appreciate that China is something that gets missed in a lot of our Western media, in a lot of the reporting on the models, even in a lot of the research, and they are on par with what's happening in the Western world. Have a look at the release of ErnieBot today. Incredible. If it's based on Ernie Titan 3.0 at 260 billion parameters, it's going to be amazingly powerful. And as you know, there are 1.3 billion people there who are waiting to use it. Unlike the Western world, they get it built into their apps. So Baidu will build it into what they're having to use for their daily payment, their daily communications. I think what China are doing is incredible, and I do cover Chinese models as much as possible. So you can find my Ernie Vilge 2.0 video on YouTube to step through one of their models. Awesome, guys. That was a really fun look at GPT-4. You'll find all of the background that I've been able to come up with, and I'll keep this updated at LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-4. We're going to be discovering more and more about this model as we step through the next few hours, days, weeks, and months. But right now, we don't know a whole lot about the stats. We've got a few guesses. We know that OpenAI want to be very private. We know the timeline to get here, including the fact that they had a chinchilla-aligned model back in July 2022. That paper about fill in the middle, FIM, the 6.9 billion parameter model. We know that it's finally open. We know that it has got a huge amount of context windows so that we can generate entire film scripts with it, or entire 24,000 word reports. We're guessing when it comes to data sets and size, and the capabilities that I've spoken about are really extraordinary. I'm going to wrap up there. I'd love to invite you through to the memo. Where do these massive labs come for information? There was a rumor that because of the sharing, or the kind of lack of medium to exchange information, that all of these labs were going to Twitter to find out the bleeding edge news. I've got Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, a lot of the big labs in the memo, because the memo is designed to be bleeding edge. We talked about Midjourney version 5 days before it came out. We talked about GPT-4 within hours of its release. It's artificial intelligence that matters, as it happens in plain English. It's designed for you, it's not designed for the labs. The next edition is going to be huge. I can already see just how long it's going to be, because on Tuesday, there were 3 big models released. There was MedPalm 2 by Google, which is 540 billion parameters plus. There was GPT-4, of course, and there's one that I'm forgetting. Mustn't have been that exciting. But consider 3 big models released on one day, and it might give you a feel to just how much will be in the next edition of the memo. I'll invite you through. Thank you so much for joining. See you soon.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Love artificial intelligence? Excited by the explosive progress of integrated AI? I am. Join my private mailing list, The Memo.
Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get priority access to my articles, videos, and behind-the-scenes tips as soon as they're released, with a monthly or annual subscription.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.